Michelle, you indicated Steve and Ben are joining us. Oh, there's Steve. Okay.
Ben is not joining us tonight. He's absent.
That's right. Okay. Well, with that said, I think we have everyone here, and I will go ahead and call this May 3rd, 2021 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. We are meeting remotely via WebEx. Hopefully, it's my hope at least for the last time, but we can discuss that towards the end of the meeting. With that said, thanks everyone for joining us tonight remotely. And if you have any technical issues, you can always contact Michelle via the chat that's located at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen this evening, but hopefully things will run pretty flawlessly. With that said, we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance. And let's see, Frank, do you mind leading us this evening? And Rebecca will hold the flag.
Very nice. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks very much, Frank. We'll move on to item 3 of our agenda, which is our one and only presentation. We have Mike Kopel joining us this evening. He's the executive director with the Whitefish Lake Institute to provide us his annual aquatic invasive species update regarding activities that are scheduled for this summer and fall. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor Mulfeld, and good evening, City Councilors. I'm just going to spend a few minutes tonight going over the aquatic invasive species management program here in Whitefish. And I thought I'd start with a little background from a state level. Last year, Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and its partners inspected 174,000 watercraft in the state of Montana. And of those, there were 35 mussel-fowl boats found. There were also many boats found to have aquatic vegetation attached and other suspect vessels, but 35 mussel-fowl boats being transported through the state. This year already, they've found 15 mussel-fowl boats. So a fairly dramatic increase early on this year as compared to last year. And of that, most of those so far are coming from the Midwest as opposed to our southern neighbors. Also, Tiber Reservoir, which if you remember, gave us a scare in late 2016 when there was a positive finding for a mussel villager or larval form life stage. They have continued detection monitoring there, including divers, microscopy samples, environmental DNA, dogs that are trained to sniff out or smell zebra mussels, benthic dredges, all sorts of methods, and all of the monitoring has come up negative to this point. So this is the 5th year of that effort. And if this year comes out clean, then FWP will most likely move to a petition to delist that reservoir from a mussel positive standpoint, at which point I would expect FWP to remove whatever safeguards they have put in place up to this point, including enhanced inspections and decontaminations when boats are leaving that water body. Here in Whitefish in 2020, the data shows a slight decline in total watercraft visits, which I don't think is unusual due to the fact that we didn't have any Canadian visitors last year due to COVID. 2020 was the first year that Whitefish Lake State Park actually inspected more watercraft than at City Beach. However, City Beach did have more total watercraft visits than State Park. So in other words, City Beach didn't actually physically inspect as many watercraft, but we had a lot of watercraft coming through that station with exit seals. And just as a reminder, those exit seals have proven to be a very valuable management tool in our local program. So if you're boating on Whitefish Lake after you've been inspected, as you leave, you can get an exit seal. And if you do not visit another water body and break that seal, you can come back to Whitefish and be expedited through the inspection station. So saving staff time and making the program more convenient to the boating public. So exit seals and the self-certifications now have become a valuable tool, I think, more and more of the public understand what they need to do to get a self-certification. So that's been a positive move. And then we had the full build out. You've probably noticed the preventative watercraft decontamination station at the city beach overflow parking area. So the Whitefish Lake Institute was awarded a grant from DNRC to help fund that. Of course, we cooperated closely with Maria and Carla at Parks and Rec and Craig and crew at Public Works to get that infrastructure in place and operational. And so that's basically, in my opinion, the last capital piece that we needed for the Whitefish AIS program. So I think we're in a good point moving forward. In terms of high risk watercraft and whitefish, we generally send about, well, under 10% of all watercraft inspected to the preventative decontamination station. So I think our algorithm for what watercraft are high risk is valid. And just so you know, those are primarily ballast boats. These are boats that have interior tanks, holding tanks to draw in water to provide wakes on the back end of the boat for surfing, wakeboarding, that type of thing. But in those ballast tanks, you can never completely drain them. So there's always residual water in there, which is a good home for the larval stage of zebra mussels. So they get sent to the preventative decontamination station to receive a hot water flush where they get hit with 120-degree water for a certain contact period. And that kills them, but does not harm any internal watercraft components. With our early detection monitoring effort, we have no indicators of zebra mussels or Eurasian water milfoil in local water bodies other than the Eurasian water milfoil control effort underway at Beaver Lake. And last year we did have additional plants found by FWP divers. So the Whitefish Lake Institute is cooperating with FWP, who has taken over primary management of the lake at this point. And we assist the divers as well as assist in the deployment of bottom barriers to choke out sunlight over big patches in the lake to kill that Eurasian water milfoil. I do have a new infestation to report. Faucet snails were found in Lost Loon Lake. So faucet snails, I imagine we'll find them in other water bodies here locally as time goes by. It's assumed that the primary vector is by waterfowl. They are filter feeders. They scrape algae off of rocks, but they can also filter water. And they're not a human health risk, probably more of a health risk to waterfowl since they're a vector carrying trematodes. But anyway, that's a new local infestation that we know about. Moving forward in 2021, there's just a few changes. Largely the program is running smoothly. Decon hours have shifted a little bit on the shoulder season. So in May and September, before Memorial Day and after Labor Day, decontaminations will be by appointment only, and Carla will handle those. And then on weekends, any decontamination needs will be sent to Region 1 in Kalispell. The data from the program supports that management decision. We don't have that many decon needs in May and September. However, I'll just note that we've had pretty rainy and inclement weather the last couple of Mays. So I think it's important for us to continue to collect data and to determine if that's a valid move or not, or if we do need to, in fact, staff the decon station in person earlier in May. This year, Dana and I still need to flesh out the MOU. I don't foresee it changing much unless Dana does. The only change from our end is we're asking for an additional $500 for a total amount of $7,500. And that increase is due to increases we are subject to from the University of Montana Environmental DNA Laboratory to process our samples. And then on the other end, the Whitefish Lake Institute is contributing $18,700 towards the decontamination staffing costs, as well as station operations. And other than that, no major changes. You have the report in your packet tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I do want to give a big shout out to Maria Butts and Carla Belsky at Parks and Rec. Carla does a fantastic job of administering, coordinating this program on the ground there at the inspection stations. And I'd also like to call out our partners at Whitefish Lake State Park and Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks. So thank you for your time this evening.
Thanks very much, Mike. I had a quick question, and I'll ask council if they have any questions. Are we still installing the outlet screen at Beaver Lake as a kind of a backup measure?
Yeah, that's we keep that deployed near the little bay near the outlet on Beaver Lake, and so every year the Whitefish Lake Institute will go up there and check that, reposition it, and the intent there is that if there are in fact Eurasian water milfoil plants fragmenting, if we do get drifters moving towards that into the lake, we'll capture them out in the pelagic or open water zone of Beaver Lake and reduce the chance that they move towards the stream inlet of Beaver Creek, which is hydraulically connected to Whitefish Lake.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. My only last comment is it's pretty amazing when we initiated this program back in 2014, our budget appropriation was about $40,000 as shown in Mike's report. And today, and back then, I should add that we are obviously concerned about that being an annual contribution that would have to come from an increase in property tax or some other means. And this year we're down to $7,500, as Mike indicated. And I think it's just a testament to the hard work that the Parks and Rec Department has put into this program. Obviously the efforts of the Whitefish Lake Institute, and of course our strong partnerships that have helped bring money and horsepower to the table to keep this program, this very important program, running for our community. So thanks to Mike, Maria, your staff, Carla, and everyone else from FWP, et cetera. So thanks very much, Mike.
Thank you.
I'll open it up to questions for Mike, and I'll start with Councilor Fury.
I actually don't have any questions, as Mike probably knows, because I am on the Whitefish Lake Institute board. And the one thing I'll just make a little pitch here for the Whitefish Lake Institute. And just, if you looked at, it was on page 1, I believe, of Mike's presentation for us tonight. If we look at the value that the lake brings to homes in this community, which ultimately translates into tax dollars for the city and the county and the state and the schools and everybody else, it's pretty amazing. But what is even more amazing is how few of those actual landowners are members of the Whitefish Lake Institute. And so I just put my little board president hat on and say, it's an extremely valuable thing that we do. And the mayor's statement about how we are down to literally $7,500 city contribution to that, that's because of other grants and other funding sources that we use at the Institute to go ahead and make that happen. And I just would encourage anybody that uses the lake, even if it's $5 or something else, become a member of the Whitefish Lake Institute. It's really important. So that's my question. So there you go.
Thanks, Andy. Councilor Sweeney.
Nothing we need to take up here. Mike, as you know, I live on Lost Loon Lake, and I noted your issue with the contamination in the lake. I can talk to you about that offline. What, if anything, you might think the lake owners could or should do or need to be concerned about. But I'll take that offline. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Frank. Councilor Norton.
No, I just think it's kind of a miracle that we're in this place. So thank you, all three of you, for doing this for so long to keep our lake clean. It's pretty much amazing to me what's been done. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Councilor Norton. Excuse me, Councilor Hennon.
No questions for me.
Thanks, Ryan. And Councilor Cornell.
Hey, Mike, I just wonder, the question I have is, with the way things have been going here, Do you see more visitation at off hours when the contamination station is not open? This might be more a question for the city than for you, but
Yeah, that is actually a question for Carla. She would be best suited to answer that. I don't know that offhand, Steve.
okay. That's my only question, really. Just thanks for all the work you've been doing over the years. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Mike. Good luck this summer, and we'll probably see you down at the boat ramp at some point.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your time tonight. We'll move on to item 4 of our agenda, which is communications from the public. We do have several public hearings advertised for tonight, so if you're here to talk to those individual hearings, I would just ask that you wait until I call those hearings later in the meeting. Otherwise, if you have information to share with the city council, now is your opportunity. Just for the record, your name and address, and I'm going to direct or ask Michelle to direct the public comment portion of the meeting. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. Good evening. So if you are interested to speak towards the council at this time, please raise your hand. You can do that by clicking the participants button to the bottom right-hand corner of your monitor. The participants list will pop up, and you can hover over your name. You'll have to kind of search for your name. And at that time, a hand icon will come up, and just click on that hand icon. You can, if you're participating by phone, you can hit *3 and that will raise your hand. Or you can right click on the bottom of your screen left to the red X. There is an option there to raise your hand or just send a chat, which is bottom right hand corner, click the chat and type your question into me and hit enter, and it'll come right on to me. For those of you that are not, I'm going to mute your mic. So if you are muted, it's because I've muted you so that we're not getting any feedback. For right now, we do have Robin Peony who would like to speak. So Robin, if you'd like to unmute your mic and state your name and address, please.
Hey, good evening. My name is Robin Peony. I live at 1057 Creekview Court. Thank you, Mayor Mulfeld, City Council and staff. I would like to request that the city consider a municipal resolution endorsing the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, a bill currently in Congress with 40 co-sponsors. As you know, a resolution is a formal expression of opinion. The reason for creating this resolution is to urge our United States Congress to take effective action on climate. Last August, local government resolutions from across the country supporting the Energy Innovation Act numbered 100 and represented over 7% of the US population. As of today, there are 115 governments in support, and I would like to see Whitefish be number 116. Aside from being on the Whitefish Climate Action Plan Steering Committee, I volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby, who supports this bill. It is a carbon pricing policy, sometimes called carbon cash back. It puts a low but gradually rising fee on carbon emission equivalents at the source, so at the mine or the well. It differs from a carbon tax because it returns all monies collected to Americans in the form of monthly cash payments. It works using simple market economics, driving products, services, and industry to clean energy sources. It will reduce America's emissions by 30% in just the first 5 years alone. It will drive us faster towards affordable clean energy, keeping businesses healthy and creating jobs. And it puts money in your pocket, which makes this policy affordable. Most low and middle income Americans come out ahead financially. So how will a municipal resolution help? It will send our collective voice directly to Washington, D.C., showing strong support for federal legislation to address climate change. And I suggest that our municipal resolution include a planned action by the city to transmit copies of the resolution to the President and the Vice President of the United States and to our members of Congress, Senators Daines and Tester and Congressman Rosendale. So how will this benefit Whitefish? Climate changes here in Whitefish. Your older family members might recall how Whitefish Lake used to freeze more often, or how there were more days for skiing. Continued warming will continue to affect our outdoor way of life, but even more dramatically. The Energy Innovation Act, if it becomes law, we will start to mitigate global warming while asserting international influence. But that's not all. Jobs will be created in Montana through rapid investment in clean energy and building efficiency. This directly helps meet our climate action plan goals. And the extra spending money in our pockets from the dividend will provide more dollars to spend with our local businesses. Please consider creating this resolution. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Robin, for your comments today.
Thank you. Just a reminder for those that are attending by phone, if you would like to raise your hand, please hit *3 on your phone pad to raise your hand. Deidre Corson, you're next. If you'd like to unmute your mic and speak your name and address, please.
Thank you, Michelle. My name is Deidre Corson, and I live at 213 Whitetail Lane, Whitefish, Montana. Thank you, Mayor Melfeld, City Council, City Whitefish staff. I'm speaking on behalf of North Valley Music School, and for those of you that I haven't met yet, I've been the executive director there for the past 5 years. And for the past 15 years, North Valley Music School has been working on a future development project and talking about building a new facility, mainly for reasons of outgrowth in our current facility and outgrowing that building. And the one that's really has been in our face is the safety issues that are presented as our town gets busier on Spokane Avenue. So tonight we would like to submit a request to the council, City Council, to lease a piece of Parks and Recreation city land at the north end of Smith Fields, which was formerly Project Whitefish Kids, to build this new music facility for the community. This land was released by Parks and Rec, and it was on April 13th. The park board unanimously agreed to make the recommendation to the city council that we are able to lease that land from the city to build a new facility. So I think most of you at this point probably know about NVMS, but we are the only nonprofit community music school in the state of Montana. And the past 25 years, we've probably served thousands of students. We've offered 500,000 private lessons. We've had concerts, recitals, events all around the Flathead Valley. We've hosted veterans programs. We have a saying that no child is left untuned, and we make sure that anyone who wants a music education can have a music education at NVMS. This year, our scholarship program has awarded over $20,000 in scholarships. We have enriched our community through music programming for all ages and all abilities. NVMS is a community-driven organization, and we've become a leader in the local nonprofit sector. A few years ago, we received the City of Whitefish Extra Mile Day Award, and we've received the Whitefish Community Foundation's Great Fish Award back in 2018. So our project that we hope to do, if this leasing the Smith Fields land works, is we would like to provide a safe, accessible, and inclusive musical home for future generations of music students of all ages and abilities. Our plan is to build a new facility with 12 private soundproof studios, group classroom, a multi-purpose room for recitals and events. We'd like to have state-of-the-art audio-visual equipment and soundproofing, technology for virtual music education, and that's all interior. And outside, we'd like to include a music park, which is a hands-on park to play musical instruments that all sound nice together. And include in a community amphitheater that the city will have access to. And the biggest, safety issue is plenty of safe parking down at Smithfield. So NVMS capital campaign fundraising would also include raising an endowment fund, which we have 2 endowment funds currently at the Whitefish Community Foundation, and they are up to about $300,000 each between the 2 of them, supporting general funds and scholarships. So this is a project that will not fail. So some of the community benefits included in this project would be the outdoor music park, the outdoor performance area. Again, that can be used, down there. It's easy for the soccer fields, the baseball teams to come down and do their awards ceremonies. The large multi-purpose room could seat up to 100 people for small community events indoors. NVMS has a lot of free programming. Accessibility is our word. So we have a free children's choir called the Glee Club. We have a weekly acoustic jam, community orchestra for beginners. Talked about our scholarship program, our veterans program. Oh, we have a in-schools music program. It hasn't been able to run this year, but we go into the schools with our teachers and they support the Whitefish School's public school teachers. Last year, we had about 60 orchestra students that were being supported. And this is all paid for through NVMS grants, mostly the Great Fish Challenge. We offer free community concerts, which include our faculty concert. And if you haven't been to that, you should go. Our faculty is super talented and they're all very different. We have a spring concert. We do a Camp Festival Amadeus concert. And these are all free and open to the public. We do petting zoos for all ages where people can come in and actually touch and play instruments. Again, not super COVID friendly, but when we're not in a pandemic. So yeah, the Smithfields project would be a dream come true for us. We've been talking about this for a long time, and as you guys know, we several years ago purchased the old Parks and Rec building, hoping to keep that downtown and move in there. And it didn't work out, but we think that Smithfields provides a great location for the long run because we have quite a few students that come from Columbia Falls and Kalispell, and that's a much quicker access. And if you're down there in the spring and fall, there are thousands of students that are already there and they can just walk from soccer practice or lacrosse or baseball right into their music lesson or right out to their practice from music lessons. So it's a really convenient location for a lot of our kids that are involved in lots of activities. So again, just to touch on these points, it's music for all ages, all abilities, all income levels, all diversity. We want to be inclusive, accessible, safe space. We hope, this will not have any financial burden to the city or to the taxpayers. It will all be privately funded through donations, through grants. And hopefully I didn't miss anything, but I appreciate your time and we hope that you'll support our efforts to grow. So if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Thanks, Deidre. We don't usually respond to public comment, but I'm going to go ahead and do so. Thanks for the letter that you submitted. The council did receive that late this afternoon. And I think the process moving forward is we'll go ahead at the end of the meeting, and I'm sure we'll have the support of the council to have this included on the May 17th agenda that we can discuss later in the meeting under communications from the mayor and city councilors. I think this is I'll go on record to say I think this is a awesome project. I spoke earlier on with Terry Nelson and Lynn Akey when this concept was first brought forward, and I'm fully supportive, but of course we need to go through a robust public process given the fact that it is public-private or public property, but for all the reasons you've indicated, I think it's something well worth this council's consideration. So appreciate the letter. I'm sure Dana, Angie can talk to us more in a couple of weeks about process, and I would suggest that a member of your board or yourself included, Deidre, attend that meeting in case we have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, any further public comment tonight?
I'm going to give folks a couple more, just one more chance, especially those that are joining by phone. If you're having a hard time raising your hand, if you'd like to speak, I do see just 2 phone numbers here. If you'd like to speak, *6 on your phone will unmute your phone. If you would like to speak, please unmute your phone and speak your name and address for us. I just want to give everybody the same opportunity that everybody else has that's attending by computer. Again, you still have a chance to raise your hand by the computer with your participants list. So I'm just going to give you about a half a minute here just to get that situated.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, thanks, John. I don't see any other comments tonight.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to item 5 of our agenda, which is communications from volunteer boards. I will stay with those that called in. Are there any volunteer board reports from the general public tonight?
Richard would like to speak.
Deputy.
Mayor, Council, good evening. I wanted, as a member of the Whitefish Community Library Board of Directors, I wanted to let you know, and the community at large know, that the Whitefish Community Library has once again received the Montana State Library Commission Excellent Library Service Award. Potential recipients include academic, public school, and special libraries. And the Whitefish Community Library has been honored with this award every year since 2013, the year the award was established. This award speaks volumes as to the care, competence, and professionalism of our library staff and our library director, Joy Kositsky. Finally, lest you forget, the Whitefish Community Library is the 8th largest library in the state of Montana, and it is a library of which we can all be justifiably proud. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thanks, Richard, and congratulations to the Library Board of Trustees, and please pass that on behalf of the council, please.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us tonight with the good news. Not seeing any more volunteer board reports from the audience, I'll turn it over to the council. Any board reports from the council? Not seeing any. We'll move on to our consent agenda, which is item 6. You have the minutes from the April 19th regular session included. Any changes or additions to the minutes, Rebecca?
Yep, there's 2 corrections, both on page 63. And the first one is where the paragraph begins, Melissa. I think the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act should have capitals for that. And then on page 63, under Chad Bauer, last paragraph, I think it should read, they are the current owner, not writer. Otherwise, thank you again, Michelle, for keeping us on track.
Thanks, Rebecca. With that correction, can I please have a motion for approval for the corrected minutes and the consent agenda?
I'll make a
Mayor,
motion.
I'll move.
Whoops.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
To approve the consent agenda and minutes.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Sweeney. Michelle, roll call, please.
Councillor Quinnell,
In favor?
Councillor Sweeney,
In favor.
Councillor Hennon,
In favor.
Councillor Fury,
In favor?
Councillor Norton,
In favor.
And Counselor Davis is absent. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. We will move on to our 2 public hearings tonight. We'll start with item 7A, which is consideration of a request from Mario and Cindy Carbone. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, I apologize, for a conditional use permit to construct an accessory apartment above a garage located at 560 Columbia Avenue. The property is zoned WR2, which is our 2-family residential district. And we have a staff report included in the packet from Tara. And I would like to turn it over at this time to Tara to present her staff report.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Could I share my screen? Oh, you just gave me permission. Okay, so WCUP 2106 is for a new accessory apartment at 560 Columbia Avenue. That's behind an existing single-family residence. There's currently an old accessory structure at the rear of the lot, but it's proposed to be replaced by a 2-car garage with a 560 square foot apartment above it. Like the mayor said, the lot's zoned WR2 and the growth policy designation is urban, so the land use corresponds with the proposed use. All surrounding properties are also zoned WR2, so pretty simple. 3 parking spaces will be required for the site, which they definitely have space for. 2 spots will be in the garage, and then the 3rd spot actually already exists at the back of the lot, but it will be paved after this hopefully goes through. The accessory apartment will be accessed from the alley, which shouldn't change or increase traffic in the neighborhood in any way, because that's how the current structure is already accessed. And then the addition of the garage will also increase the parking availability that's on site from what's there now by 2 full spaces. So hopefully that will actually help kind of alleviate some on-street parking needs in the neighborhood. All setback, height, and lot coverage requirements appear to be met per the submitted plans, but that'll be confirmed at the time of the building permit. The application was appropriately noticed, and 3 written comments were received prior to the planning board meeting on April 15th, which can all be found in your packets. The applicant was able to speak at the meeting as well and respond to verbal public comment by 1 neighbor. You can read the attached minutes as well, but Mr. Carbone, the applicant, clarified that they plan to move to Whitefish and reside in the main house as their primary residence. That being said, I'll try and keep this pretty short since I know most of you kind of know the drill on CUPs for accessory apartments. They come up quite a bit, but both the staff and the planning board recommendation was to approve WCUP 2106 with 7 conditions of approval, including, of course, parking and associated paving requirements, and then also obviously the need for a deed restriction prohibiting long-term rentals if the owner doesn't reside in the main home, which it sounds like they're planning to. So with that, I'll take any questions. And then I know Cindy Carbone, the wife of Mario, who was here last time for planning board, is also here and excited to share a bit on the project.
John, I'm sorry, I had to mute you. We were getting feedback.
No problem. Thanks, Tara. We will start with questions for Tara on our staff report. Councilor Fury.
No questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Tara.
Thanks, Andy. Councilor Sweeney.
No questions.
Councilor Norton.
Clarification. Did you mean to say limiting short-term rentals? Because I think you said long-term rentals.
So the deed restriction is just on long-term rentals. They have to be in the primary house, but then obviously no short-term rentals are allowed at all.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Henning.
No questions.
Thanks, Ryan. Councilor Quinnell.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that there is currently a garage with an apartment, or there's just an apartment on the back part, and that's going to be torn down.
Correct. Yep, it'll be demolished prior to building the new one, and currently it's just an apartment. There's no CUP on record. It's just an older kind of grandfathered in structure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. We did advertise for a public hearing on item 7A of the agenda, and we'll hold that public hearing now. It was lawfully advertised, and I know the applicant is here. Cindy Carboni, do you have anything to add to the staff report? Now would be your opportunity, and just for the record, your name and address, please.
Oh, hi. My name is Cindy Carboni. The address is 560 Columbia Ave. Thank you for having me. My husband was on the other call, the planning committee call, and I'm not sure that he, I read the comments and I just wanted to address the comments, just because I know there's a lot of stuff going on in Whitefish that people are uncomfortable with. So I just wanted to assure people that, we do live in Texas now, but we are actually from the Northeast. We moved here in 2007. And so we've been looking for the past couple of years for sort of our next stage of life, where we're going to move. And it has to be someplace where our boys want to come, which would not be Texas because there's not a lot to do here. And when we went to Whitefish over the summer, we fell in love. My husband's a big skier. I ski, but I'm really bad. I want to cross country ski. I grew up on the ocean. He grew up in Connecticut. We bought the house because I wanted to be part of the community. I wanted to be able to walk downtown. I grew up in a town like that. I know that there was issues with, the places being ugly and being these big towers and things like that. And I assure you, we already have the plans for the front of the house. And then when this happened, the reason this is coming up now, because we would have just done all the renovations together, is that the studio has mold, like really bad mold issues. So it has to be demoed. It's very old anyways. It just wasn't worth fixing and putting the money into it when we knew that we were going to do something later on. And so that's why it's coming up now. It will not match the house right away, but it will match. I mean, we have the same architect that did the plans for both. So it will eventually match in like 2 years when we build the main, when we renovate the main house. I know there was issues with like windows and looking over into, people's yards. And, the only window that I can see people like standing in front of is in front of the sink, and that's going to overlook our yard. In terms of rentals, we plan on using it as like a guest house, especially, because we won't really know anyone, all of our families all over the place back in Boston and friends, from around here. But I think for the first few years, we'll probably rent it. I know my experience with renting the house has been that I know that there's a major shortage, and we have 2 really great women. They're both nurses at Kalispell Hospital in the house right now. And I think I would just feel bad sitting empty. You know what I mean? Like once we move into the house. So I bet we will rent it. I don't know if we will rent it, forever. Maybe when our kids have families, it will be, more for, them to come and stay in. But, that's our plan. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that, I know people are just buying up properties and then just renting them out. And that is not our plan. Our plan is to get there in the next few years. We have our youngest going to college next year, and start a life there. So that's all I really wanted to say.
Thanks, Cindy. I really appreciate you personalizing this for the council, because obviously we are seeing a lot of change in town, but that's quite honestly been happening since I moved here in 1995. I do have to ask you a quick question. Where in Connecticut is your husband from?
He's from New Canaan.
Okay, I'm from Darien.
Oh, yeah.
So,
there you go.
Yeah. Well, thanks for attending this evening. With that said, any public comment this evening, Michelle?
So we'll give everybody a chance to raise their hand. Please raise your hand by clicking the participants list on the right-hand side, find your name and find the hand icon and click on it. Hit the 3 buttons on the bottom of your screen to the left of the X, or you can by phone click or type in *3 on your phone pad, and that will raise your hand. I'll give you just a moment to do that. And I don't see anybody raising their hand.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion to get things started.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we approve WCUP 21-06, approving the findings of fact and staff report. Conditions of approval as recommended to us by our very own Whitefish Planning Board at their April 15, 2021 meeting.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hennon. Further discussion? Michelle, roll call, please.
Councilor Quinnell,
In favor?
Councilor Sweeney,
In favor.
Councilor Hennon,
In favor.
Councilor Fury,
In favor.
and Councilor Norton.
In favor.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tara, and thanks, Cindy, for participating this evening. Good luck. We'll move on to item 7B of the agenda, which is consideration of a request from Douglas and Kelly Peppemeyer for a conditional use permit to construct an accessory apartment over a garage located at 815 East 2nd Street in Whitefish, and the property again is zone WR2, which is our two-family residential district. And I'll turn it over to Hillary to present her staff report.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. And I will just show you a picture of the site plan so you can follow along. So another garage apartment proposal in the same WR2 neighborhood that we have been hearing a lot of ADU uses being put into. The surrounding land uses are all residential, and it all has the WR2 two-family residential zoning. The growth policy designates this area as urban, which is consistent with the zoning. This project was noticed with mail to adjacent property owners and in the paper and advisory agencies, and no comments were received on this project. Overall, the proposed use does comply with the zoning district and the development standards for accessory apartments. The garage will be no more than 600 square feet, and as such, can use the accessory structure setbacks of 6 feet from the rear and the side. I don't know if you noticed, but in the staff report, there's actually several interior lot lines here. And since we use the external lot lines to determine the setbacks, one of the conditions that we're recommending is that those interior lot lines be removed through boundary line adjustment. 3 off-street parking spaces will be required, 2 spaces for the main home and 1 space for the apartment. There's currently a garage that's attached with a concrete driveway in the front. There's plenty of space there for at least 2 to 4 vehicles, and then the garage in the back as well will have parking spaces. The parcel is about 8,800 square feet with a maximum lot coverage allowed of 40%. So it appears that that standard will be met, and that will be confirmed at the time of the building permit. The surrounding neighborhood has similar uses, similar designs and size and density in the immediate area. At the April Planning Board meeting, staff recommended approval of the conditional use permit, subject to 8 conditions of approval. The applicant did speak at the public hearing, and I believe he's online as well this evening. No other members of the public spoke. In making their decision, the Planning Board adopted staff report WCUP 21-05 with findings of fact and 8 recommended conditions of approval. Some of the more relevant are the 3 off-street parking spaces that I mentioned, the need to pave the new driveway or apron from the alley to the new garage. Prior to the building permit, a boundary line adjustment to remove the interior lot lines must be completed. Property must be deed restricted such that the accessory apartment is only rented if the owner is living in the main residence. And again, short-term rentals are not permitted. So do you have any questions?
Thank you, Hillary. Any questions for Hillary on her staff report? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on item 7B of our agenda, and we will hold that public hearing now. I see that Doug has joined us as the applicant on this project. Doug, anything additional to add? And just for the record, your name and address, please.
Yep, Doug Putmeyer, 815 2nd Street East. And no, nothing to add. We agree with staff report, and I'm just available if you guys have any questions.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. Michelle, I'll turn it back to you to manage any public comment we may have on this item.
Okay. If you do want to speak towards this application, please raise your hand by those that I've mentioned before. The participants page, *3 on your phone, send me a chat, or the 3 dots at the bottom of the page next to the X. I'll give you minutes, or not even a minute, a little bit to do that for us, please. John, I don't see anybody who wants to speak towards this.
Great, thanks, Michelle. With that said, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing on item 7B of the agenda and turn it back to the council for preferably a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve WCUP 21-05, the findings of fact in the staff report and the conditions of approval.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by, I think that was Councilor Sweeney. Steve, would you like to speak to your motion?
I don't have anything more on this. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Further questions or comments from the council? Michelle, roll call, please.
Councilor Quinnell?
In favor?
Councilor Sweeney?
In favor.
Councilor Hennon?
In favor.
Councilor Fury?
In favor.
And Councilor Norton?
In favor.
Thank you.
And that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Hillary. We'll move on to item 8A of our agenda, which is consideration to authorize to proceed with the bidding of the Edgewood Place and Texas Avenue reconstruction project. This will be phase 1. It appears on page 280 of your packet, and Craig Workman, our Public Works Director, is here to summarize the staff report.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This project will look fairly familiar because we just looked at it a little over a month ago to move into final design. But the Edgewood and Texas reconstruction project is the next roadway on the resort tax priority list. The Public Works staff has completed our review of the final designs of the first phase of this project, which will involve the reconstruction of Edgewood Place from Colorado Avenue to the eastern city limits. The section of Collector Roadway is the only means of ingress/egress to and from Whitefish on the north side of the viaduct. The project will involve enhancements to driver and pedestrian safety, stormwater management improvements, and water distribution system upgrades. Council awarded the contract for the design of the project to RPA last September, and staff has been working with RPA to balance the desires of the residents with the long-term vision and growth projections for the corridor. Public outreach began with the project website, which was launched last fall, and since then we've had 3 newsletters as well as 3 public outreach events via WebEx. We've also had numerous individual meetings with residents interested in the project. Preliminary recommendations for the first phase of this project were presented to Council back on February 16th of this year, and staff was authorized to proceed with final design. So attached to this report are several pages from that final design set, which provide an overview of the work that will take place. Also included in the packet is an updated schedule and the current estimated budget. So as I mentioned, the magnitude and scope of this project requires it to be completed in 2 phases. Phase 1 will be the reconstruction of Edgewood Place, which will hopefully take place this summer beginning in July. Phase 2 will then be the reconstruction of Texas Avenue, presumably with construction taking place next summer. The city's approved transportation plan calls for Edgewood Place to be an urban collector, which is 32 feet wide, including curb and gutter. The Upon evaluation of the existing and projected vehicular traffic on Edgewood Place, as well as the significant number of cyclists that use the roadway, the project has been designed at a reduced width of 28 feet with vertical face curb and gutter. We feel the reduced width will help to calm traffic while still providing the necessary space for bicyclists on the roadway, and will also help maintain additional distance between the proposed improvements and the existing homes on the north side of the road. Keeping the roadway at a similar elevation in the southern portion of the roadway will also allow us to maintain cover over the existing gas main and take advantage of the existing gravel base that is shown to be significant through our geotechnical analysis. The vertical curb will provide drainage, ease of snow removal, parking and access control, and a variety of safety aspects for motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians. Much of the conversation regarding Edgewood Place has revolved around the installation of the sidewalk on the north side of the road. And based on the recommendation of staff and the desires of the majority of the residents who responded to our questionnaire, a 5-foot concrete sidewalk has been incorporated into the final design. At the request of council, the sidewalk will run the entire length of the project, terminating near the eastern city limits. The sidewalk will be separated by a 6-foot landscape boulevard. In addition, 3 stops have been designed at Edgewood Place at the intersections of Texas and Colorado to control vehicles and improve pedestrian safety at these busy crosswalks. Stormwater management is one of the key priorities of this project, and a new stormwater system will be included with capacity for future extension up Texas Avenue. The stormwater will be conveyed to the existing large diameter storm sewer crossing Wisconsin Avenue on the north side of the viaduct. Improvements will also be made to the swale along the south side of Edgewood Place on the west side of Wisconsin Avenue. There's currently a 14-inch water main that runs from Texas Avenue to about 150 feet west of Colorado. This water main is made out of ductile iron and is over 50 years old. So upgrading this facility to an 18-inch PVC main will help satisfy growing demand in the neighborhood and ensure the roadway is not disturbed for future water main repairs. As with past road reconstruction projects, the corridor will be upgraded to include LED lighting. One of the more difficult parts of this design has been the traffic control and construction routing. So we have completed a detailed traffic control plan that's been developed for the project, which requires the contractor to coordinate all street closures in advance of doing so. This will require a minimum of 48 hours notice to property owners and emergency services. For constructability, the project has been split into 3 distinct work areas. Work area 1 will be the portion of Edgewood Place from Wisconsin Avenue to the eastern side of Colorado Avenue. This area we're allowing to be closed for vehicular traffic for a total of 30 days. Outside of that 30-day window, the road must be open to 2-lane, 2-way traffic with flaggers in place when 2-way traffic cannot be maintained. So essentially, in that eastern or westernmost portion, we are allowing a 30-day closure between Wisconsin and Colorado to get primarily the stormwater in. After that point, we expect that they'll have 1-way traffic with flaggers and then 2-way traffic at night and on weekends. And so when I say 2-way traffic when flaggers are in place, or flaggers in place when 2-way traffic cannot be maintained, that's specifically nights and weekends. So work area 2 is the portion of Edgewood Place from the eastern city limits to the western side of Texas Avenue. This section of roadway must be open to 2-lane, 2-way traffic for the entire project with flaggers in place when 2-way traffic cannot be maintained. So that's the easternmost portion of the project. And then work area 3 is the area in the middle, which will essentially be closed for a 90-day period during the project. And to allow closure of this section, we will incorporate some temporary improvements to maintain access to residents that are directly adjacent to this portion of the project. And at no time during the project with flaggers in place are we allowing more than a 10-minute wait. So at the direction of council, staff is working with RPA and Bruce Booty Landscape Architects to develop a detailed landscape restoration plan. Members of the Public Works Department, the Parks Department, the Tree Committee, RPA, and Bruce Booty, we've met with property owners most affected by this project in order to incorporate their wishes into the final restoration plan. In terms of financials, we're anticipating a total estimated project cost for phase 1 of just over $2.5 million. That funding will be split up primarily with resort tax, but also about $500,000 in the water fund and $110,000 in stormwater funds. One note that's worthy of mention is that it's been an interesting bidding environment here in the Valley over the last couple of months, primarily due to shortages in materials and labor. And so these estimates are based on recently bid projects of a similar scale. However, projects have fluctuated considerably in the last couple of months. So based on the guidance and direction received to date from council and the Resort Tax Committee, and the public outreach that's been conducted, I do respectfully request authorization to bid phase 1 of the Edgewood and Texas reconstruction project. I'll just note that, as with all projects that we bid, at the completion of bidding, final costs are presented to council with the opportunity to accept or reject them.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate your staff report. We'll start with councilor questions before we open our public hearing. I'll start with Councilor Fury. Any questions for Craig?
Just a quick one, Craig, on the closures. Is that 30 days total during the project, or is it 30 consecutive days?
It's 30 days total.
Okay.
So I anticipate they'll probably use those consecutively, but if they wanted to do it, 10 days at a time, they'd have 3 opportunities to do that.
Okay.
Thanks, Andy. Councilor Sweeney.
No questions at this time.
Thank you, Frank. Councilor Norton.
Yep, thanks, Craig. I have 2 questions. One is, what is the budget for landscaping? Because I think it's going to make a big difference to make it congruent through that region as well. Do we have an official budget for that? Because I know I was kind of pushing that when we did the walkthrough.
Yeah, give me a second and I will bring that up. If you want to ask your second question, I can track down.
Well, the second question is where the dead skunk was and all that algae, which is on BNSF land in their well. And I was wondering if there's any way we could be reaching out to them for them to improve their drainage on the south side of the project, because it was really stagnant, and it was stagnant all along the south border. And I don't know if that's their property, if we would be improving it, but something needs to be improved because it's pretty gross and pretty stagnant. So I didn't know how that worked, that if you have a working agreement with them, or we just were gonna, I don't know if we can redo it if it's on their property, but it's not draining well. And I think there's health hazards with having dead animals laying there. So those are my 2 questions.
Okay. Yeah. So in terms of the landscape restoration, we have just over $100,000 in the budget that you see here for final restoration and landscaping. That hasn't been, the design hasn't been finalized yet, but I feel that based on past projects that we've done and what we've spent, that gives us significant amount of funds that we can get this thing wrapped up and make sure that adjacent property owners are satisfied with the work that's done. And then with respect to the open swale drainage on the south side of the road, that is all going to get regraded as part of this project. The bulk of that water is actually coming off of the roadway, and it's part of the city's drainage system, although it may appear to be part of the BNSF drainage system. It really is part of the city's stormwater management system, so that will be taken care of. I can't guarantee in the future if a rodent of some sort happens to die in that ditch that it'll be carried away by the stormwater, but that's part of the Public Works list of responsibilities. So we'll make sure those sorts of things are taken care of.
So it is currently our responsibility right now to clean that up if we're seeing that it's not working and there's algae, and like we would have a mechanism for doing that right now.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Could you do that? I mean, I know I can't ask you things like that, but because Karen thought it was the BNSF land and we couldn't do anything about it, and that's why I didn't pursue it. But, all right, thank you. Glad it's going to get fixed. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Rebecca. Councillor Hennon.
No question for me.
Thanks, Ryan. Councillor Quinnell.
Nothing, thanks.
Craig, I had a real quick question. The post-construction task orders for both phases 1 and 2, what does that work entail?
It's primarily just punch list items and creating record drawings and as-built.
Okay, thanks. We did advertise for a public hearing on this item, and actually, I don't think this is scheduled for a public hearing.
This is not a public hearing. This is not a
public hearing. I apologize. So we will stay with the council just to get things moving along. Are there any additional questions for staff, or can I entertain a motion, please?
Mr. Mayor, I would.
Sorry.
I think we had Rebecca first there, Frank.
Go for it.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that the City Council authorizes staff to proceed to bid phase 1 of the Edgewood in Texas reconstruction project.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Was that Andy?
It was Ryan.
I'm sorry. Seconded by Councillor Hennon. Rebecca, would you like to speak to your motion?
It's a big project, and I really appreciate the staff spending so much time helping the people that live there prepare for the change. And thank you very much for making sure it's an adequate landscape budget. I think that'll make everybody feel better about the loss of what they perceive as their front yard. So thanks, Craig. It's a big project. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Further comments from the council? Not seeing any. Roll call, please, Michelle.
Councillor Hennon?
In favor.
Sorry, I kind of jumped around here. Councillor Quinnell?
It's my turn now. In favor, thanks.
Councillor Sweeney?
In favor.
Councillor Fury?
I get so used to hearing Ryan before me that I just, like Pavlov's dog, I start salivating, I hear Ryan's name. I'm in favor.
I'm just trying to keep you guys on your toes. Councillor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That motion does pass unanimously. Thanks, Craig, for the staff report. And we'll stay with Director Workman, and we'll move on to Resolution 21-13, or Item 8B of the agenda, which is a resolution requesting distribution of bridge and road safety and accountability program funds. Craig.
Okay, another exciting one from Public Works here. So going back to July 1st of 2017, the Montana Bridge and Road Safety and Accountability Act, or those of us in the industry affectionately referred to as BARSA, did increase Montana's fuel tax rate to 31.5 cents per gallon for gasoline and 29.3 cents per gallon for diesel. This was actually Montana's first increase in fuel tax since 1994. Along with the graduated increase in motor fuel tax, the law does stipulate that 65% of the proceeds be allocated to local governments who must match the funds with a minimum of 5% local money. BARSA funds can be used to pay for construction, reconstruction, maintenance, and repair of roads, alleys, and bridges that cities or towns are responsible for maintaining. The Public Works Department in Whitefish is using BARSA funds for the reconstruction of Monaghan Road. And the first phase of this project was completed back in fiscal year 20. And that reconstructed Monaghan from Vorman to the Park Shop. We're currently accruing proceeds from BARSA in anticipation of reconstructing the remaining gravel portion, of Monaghan to the intersection of JP Road in fiscal year 23. Once a local government has established a BARSA project, they may request distribution of the available funds to be placed into a restricted account to be used within 5 years of distribution. For fiscal year 21, the BARSA gas tax allocation for the city of Whitefish is $185,490.58. So to achieve that 5% match, a transfer of $9,274.53 will be required from the street fund. So based on this information, staff does respectfully request the council approve the accompanying resolution requesting distribution of Bridge and Road Safety and Accountability Act program funds.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions for Craig on his staff report, which would be resolution 21-13? How about a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve resolution number 21-13, a resolution requesting distribution of Bridge and Road Safety and Accountability Program funds.
Thank you, Ryan. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Norton. Further discussion? Ryan, any comments on your motion?
No, sir.
Michelle, roll call, please.
Councilor Quinnell,
In favor?
Councilor Sweeney,
In favor.
Councilor Hennon,
In favor.
Councilor Fury,
In favor.
and Councilor Norton.
In favor.
Thank you.
And that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Michelle. We'll move on to our second to last item on the agenda. You do have the city manager's report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for City Manager Smith from the council? Dana, anything additional to report on?
I do. I have a few things. First, this evening, you should have received a copy of the city's preliminary proposed FY22 budget and our capital improvement plan. So major shout out to Ben, our finance director, for all the hard work that he put in over the past few weeks, the past month or so, making sure that that document's ready for your guys' review tonight. We do have our first budget work session scheduled for June 1st, so mark your calendar. It's not the typical Monday, first and third Monday. That's going to be the Tuesday after Memorial Day week or holiday. Also, on the COVID updates, I would say we can cover it now or later on, but I did, as requested, talk to Joe Russell, the health officer with the Flathead City County Health Department, about moving to in-person meetings. And based on where we're sitting with our vaccination rates, he did feel that June 1st would be an appropriate time period that most people who would have wanted a vaccine will have been able to get their vaccine. Also to encourage social distancing and face coverings. So city staff has met with Jake and our IT department to determine if a hybrid approach is possible and what improvements we would have to purchase to make that a possibility moving forward. But my recommendation for council will be to meet in person starting June 1st. We will have to have a resolution at the next city council meeting, so that's why we have to kind of have some direction tonight. Would be to meet in person June 1st, and then starting July 7th, which is the first city council meeting, is potentially have the hybrid approach available. If we don't have the hybrid approach available yet, just with only a short period of time between now and then we might just still be in in-person meetings. So some direction on moving to in-person meetings would be helpful this evening. From the legislative session, we do anticipate that House Bill 257 will be signed soon, and that which would remove or invalidate our mask ordinance. Also, House Bill 501 passed through the legislature, so if that's signed, then we will no longer be able to trespass anybody for wearing or for somebody who will not wear a mask in a city taxpayer funded facility. And then other ones that we've just kind of watched throughout there, Senate Bill 398 passed, which had to do with the alternative vapor and nicotine products. But I do have a meeting with Cheryl, Amber Cheryl, and CB later this week to talk about steps moving forward with any type of ordinance regarding flavored tobacco, since that was on the agenda to talk about after the legislative session. So we're starting work on that again. With that, House Bill 259, we know that our legacy homeless program is no longer in effect, and we are very disappointed in that. But city staff has discussed our approach moving forward. So we are recommending holding a work session on June 7th, where we will discuss ideas that will be proposed by the city staff after communicating with City of Bozeman, City of Missoula, because they're all also looking at their programs and looking at how to incentivize housing. We'll also invite the housing committee members to that meeting, but we felt that it's most important to start with the city council at that work session to get some clear direction on where you'd like us to go, since it is no longer in the plan. Promise, I'm almost done. Last item I have on my list is the Kalispell rezone that we talked about a couple meetings back. We did get the petition at City Hall finally, and today we actually got the application, a general application that would normally be submitted from some of the residents with that process, or to move forward with that process. One thing that wasn't clear, and I rewatched the city council meeting and among staff, we talked about it wasn't clear that the city council wanted to, one, waive the fees, or for the process, having the city initiate it or having the neighborhood initiate it. And Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, but it does appear that the residents have initiated it now. It's just whether or not the city council would like to waive the fee of $2,500, roughly $2,500. So I'd like to have at least four city councilors give us that direction, just with the risk that there are some residents in that area that may not be excited about a down zone, although we aren't for sure at this point. So those are my updates, just so some direction on Kalispell Avenue and remote meetings would be great.
I'll redirect that to Councilor Sweeney. He and I spoke earlier about this very matter. Frank, do you have any comments or?
Are we talking Kalispell Avenue or are we talking remote meetings? Kalispell Avenue.
Kalispell Avenue.
Kalispell Avenue is something that I thought, I wish I'd have been clearer, let's say, last meeting. It is my impression that we as a group kind of made a decision last time that given this is a citizen-driven initiative for their neighborhood, which is consistent with our downtown master plan and growth policy that were enacted a number of years ago. It's high time we got behind and supported this zone change. It's going to go through the regular process. That said, I don't believe under the circumstances, given that it was supported by the growth policy and the master plan, and it is citizen driven by 70% of the residents in the area or homeowners in the area, that we should be charging them any fees at all. And it shouldn't be a function of waiver, in my view. We just should not be charging them fees. If we need to couch it in terms of a waiver, I'm happy to do that. But I think we need to change our policies to effectuate that. And with that said, I believe that's what we want as a group. But please, everybody else, chime in if I've misstated what I intended and what I think we want.
I'll chime in. I came away from the last meeting, for the record, thinking otherwise. But having talked with Frank about this and the points he just made, I'm comfortable now waiving the fees for the very reasons that Frank stated. And I'll just leave it at that. Other comments from the council? I think Dana is looking for some direction. Rebecca.
Yeah, I concur. I would like to waive the fees. I think when I was on planning board, which has been a year and a half ago now, we frequently, one member in particular brought up that we were not keeping current with our growth policy updates. And so perhaps if the city were current on that, there could be a charge, but basically they're doing the work of our planning board. And I also like to empower the people that live here to make sure that their lifestyle is supported by our zoning correctly. We know we have old zoning in the downtown area that we've been wanting to improve for a long time, and we just haven't done it. So I'm, like you said at the last meeting, John, I hope other neighborhoods will use this method to come forth and organize and decide how they would like their neighborhood to proceed in terms of growth. Because we do have a lot of charming older areas that need to be protected as well. So I'm in favor of proceeding as quickly as we can with this. I don't know. I know we have to have public hearings. We have to have 2 public hearings. Does it have to go to the planning board as well?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I'd like to have it on the agenda as quickly as we can mostly because I think this neighborhood is slightly at risk with the market as it is being very, very high right now. And so if it's possible to place it quickly on the agenda, I would appreciate that too. So.
Thanks, Rebecca. Further comments from other members of the council? Or can I just see a showing of hands that are in favor of the city waiving the fees based on the information that Frank provided, justification? And I'm seeing that as unanimous with those members present tonight, Dana.
Just maybe one comment, Mr. Mayor, is I always get a little apprehensive when we waive fees, and because then there's always somebody who's going to come along and say, hey, what about me? And I don't know how we would go about this or where it would come from, out of the planning department or out of Angie, possibly. But we could come up with some sort of policy that we could hang our hat on for future neighborhoods that potentially be interested in doing this. I mean, we know it's a problem that we've faced for probably 20 years where zoning and what's on the ground doesn't match, and we've known that it's something we need to take care of. But I also understand that it's a difficult thing for the city to apply for, because the 1 or 2 or 3 disgruntled property owners that do that, they're going to go to us and say, hey, what about the taking that you're currently undertaking here? So I think I would like to see us craft a policy for the future for how we would waive fees. And then I'd be totally comfortable with it. I'll support it in this case because I think the neighborhood's done partly our work for us. And so, but I said, I'm always feel better when I've got something I can hang my hat on at the end of the day. So that's my comment.
Well stated. Thanks, Andy. Further comments on this topic?
Mr. Mayor, I would chime in, and I would heartily agree with Andy's comment that this should be the policy of the city. And I would like our planning department or Angie to come up with an articulated policy, so we're not in a waiver situation. We just don't. We shouldn't be requiring fees for this kind of action under these kinds of circumstances. And so that would eliminate this idea that we are waiving fees as opposed to simply they are not charged for these kinds of actions. But I would entertain either in any case. So thanks.
Thanks, Frank.
I would just say if we add language, I think we should say the city may rather than shall not require fees. There may be circumstances where we would want those fees to apply, depending on what's going on. I would hate to just make it a blanket thing. Just saying.
So we can look at that policy and draft something for your consideration because, in this situation it was a little bit different, but you might have to have a survey done, and those fees actually cover the cost of advertising and those things. So there would be a cost borne by the city, especially if we don't have the participation of the neighborhood helping with the surveying part. Luckily, this specific rezone is down property lines that we can use our own GIS for. If it was something else, then you're looking at additional costs for survey costs, which I think we would want probably some type of support, depending on how it pencils out. I mean, if we're trying to keep property taxes flat, it's difficult. This year, not worried about it because this specific rezone is not a big deal. But we'll take a look and see what's the best way to alleviate those cost burdens, obviously for future ones through a policy change, because I agree I think where the confusion came from was, us having our normal policy of how we've always done it and then just not having that clear direction back. So in my opinion, it is a waiver of a fee at this point, but we'll get something to you guys soon. So thank you. And I think I have a direction on that item.
Thanks, Dana. I think we'll go ahead and cover Dana's inquiry regarding whether or not to go to in-person meetings starting June 1st under item 10A of the agenda. Dana, anything else that you would like to report on under item 9B of the agenda?
No, sorry about that. I was like, what's 9B? It's late. Nope, nothing other than the budget that I already shared with you. So that was it. Okay,
thanks, Dana. Then again, we'll move on to item 10A, which is our standing COVID-19 line item. Dana, as she indicated, reached out to Joe Russell, who indicated based on the data his office has that it would probably be safe for us to return to live meetings or some type of hybrid starting at the June 1st budget meeting. I fully support this and just need some comments or feedback from the council and some direction to Dana.
Mr. Mayor, I clearly endorse our returning to in-person meetings as safely and as early as we can. June 1 is fine with me, and I think that's at least it gets us moving in the right direction. My personal hope was maybe it would be the second meeting in May, but I think we can live with one more remote meeting.
Thanks, Frank. Other comments from the council, or we could also just do a simple showing of hands if you're in agreement with that direction.
Just as long as we have guidelines for what that means, like, are we wearing masks when we enter, but when we sit down, we can take them off, or as long as there's specific guidelines for when and we don't, when we don't, and when the public doesn't have to wear masks.
That will be somewhat of a challenge with that House Bill 501. If that's, I assume it's going to be signed. But I do think, our intent will be to social distance everybody so that we don't have to have concerns about the mask, where we aren't going to be able to make somebody leave because they're not wearing a mask. There is some part in our city code where we might be able to remove an individual for not wearing a mask because it's not criminal trespass, but it's a disruption of a meeting. That said, I think we're walking a fine line there. And I think as long as we're socially distanced, which is our intent to still have council space out, having 3 up at the head of the dais and then 3 down the side, at least for now. That way that the mask isn't as serious of an issue. If you guys are comfortable sitting up at the front though, I'm fine doing that as well, but they did still recommend social distancing. We'll have staff sitting at tables in the back, also socially distanced. The health board right now actually limits it to 1 person from the public at a time in the room, but I think their room's much smaller than ours is. So, and last, one thing to add to that, for council meetings, I'm fine, like getting your direction, but would you like us to leave it optional for your other committees, or do you want all committees back in person and or in a hybrid approach? Because our ordinance covers both our city council and other committee meetings.
I'm sorry, I don't want to butt in too much, but can we have recommended considerations, recommended guidelines based on the CDC? And know that we can't enforce recommended, but at least we could have a statement that recommends what we would like people to be doing. Because typically we get buy-in from our community members when we have a strong recommendation. Which
absolutely.
Okay.
No, Steve, you're absolutely right. We will have the, even for staff, they'll be required. I can require them for staff still. So sure, everybody's super excited about that, but we'll still be wearing masks and we'll have the recommendation. It might still be a requirement with just whether we enforce it or not,
Okay, thank you.
And just so I'm just for 2 seconds. So if we go to the meeting on May 17th and we repeal our ordinance that provides for remote meetings, that pretty much that ordinance just is like just repealing the other ordinance. So I don't know that we can add extra requirements, but I think we can definitely have policies like as we do for, civilized dialogue, like impose those policies too. I just don't know that we can make it part of the ordinance.
Right.
So I have a question.
Rebecca.
Yeah, is it possible to have plastic partitions up for the speaker, like when people are speaking, and then even for counselors to have those plastic partitions too? And then the other question I had is, do we have any purification system for the ventilation within our city hall? Because we do have a lot of new variants coming at us, and even the India variant is in the United States now. They're much more contagious than the one that we dealt with last year. And so I still, even though I think most people in Whitefish are probably moving towards vaccination, I'm hoping most of the council is, you can still get sick if you're exposed to a new mutation. And so we also want to avoid that as well, not only for council, but for all the staff that has to work in the city building, a lot. So I'm just wondering what we could also add in to make it safer than even last year, since we might be in this period for a while. We won't be getting the boosters until August or September. So it could be putting people at risk with the new mutations if we're not still careful. And I like Steve's idea of following the CDC guidelines. I think they are really good now. Last year, I don't think they were, but thank you.
Rebecca, to answer your questions, plexiglass is super hard to come by. I think it's taken our orders to quite a while to actually get the stuff ordered. I would say that, where the speaker is, we could look up putting some type of partition so that, there's not spray toward you if they're going to be unmasked. I don't know how effective it would be with acoustics for speakers though, for the speakers and where all the counselors are, having those plastic shields up. I think that's where wearing masks is still really important. Our ventilation system has the highest filter that our system can take, so the most robust air filter that you can have. The next level is like a hospital level, and I don't know that we could upgrade our system to accomplish that. So I would say we're doing the best that we can at the moment. we can look at plexiglass, but I haven't contemplated that just with the social distancing that's going to be in effect.
I think that's exactly right, Dan. I think we need to take a common sense approach to this. And, we have a large council chambers that opens to a large council workroom, and there's no reason why we can't distance speakers from the dais. And if councilors are more comfortable splitting up to where we have 3 councilors up at the dais plus myself, or 4 and 3 occupying the staff dais, I think I would certainly prefer that over sheets of plexiglass between seated council members, but that's certainly just my opinion. I think we have ample room in the council quarters to distance safely. Why don't we leave it at this? I agree with Steve and Rebecca, and I think Dana certainly agreed that she'll come up with some guidelines and procedures that follow the CDC recommendations, and she can circle back with us at the next meeting and lay those out for us, and we can go from there. Does that sound reasonable to everyone? Okay. Thank you all for your comments related to that. Anything else related to COVID-19?
I probably need some clarification. Would you like to have hybrid meetings as an option? Or just fully back to in-person? I mean, obviously there is some capital expense to it. And it would give our citizens that might not feel comfortable coming to City Hall still the chance to participate. But just what are your thoughts there on the hybrid meeting?
Personally, I think it's an opportunity for us to get more people involved in city government, and I think it's a plus for us if it's not too prohibitively expensive to make it happen.
I mean, depending on individual counselors' feelings towards this, I mean, my strong preference would be to have the council back in chambers along with the minimum, the directors. And again, that's your prerogative. If you're not feeling safe to do so, then I understand. But I agree with Steve that at least providing those members of the public that aren't comfortable attending in person a way to participate is very important.
I'll take that as we're good with hybrid for the public participation side of it.
Is that okay with the council?
Yeah, very good. Okay.
Yeah. Lastly, I do know that our mask ordinance is scheduled to expire on May 13th. Is that not the case, Dana?
That is correct. And unless it is House Bill 257 is signed prior to that. The governor has 10 days from the date that the bill is given to him to sign it or veto it, or he can just ignore it and let it become law in its own time. But he has indicated in his request of the legislature to make amendments that he will sign it if those amendments were made. They made them 100% within 1 day. So I anticipate his signing shortly. We are prepared with a press release, though, to respond to that to inform the public of the change.
Okay. Otherwise, come May 13th, our ordinance essentially expires, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I had some interesting discussions with some local businesses, some of which were probably the most diligent when it came to safety precautions this past year. I won't reference any specific businesses, but what's happening in town is, I guess, twofold. Number one, those that have elected not to get vaccinated, and even those that have, feel that they no longer need or are required to wear masks within our businesses in town. And again, I heard this from several business owners, and what it's causing is some rather hostile work environments for the employees in our local businesses. And they feel threatened at times, is a word that 2 business owners shared with me. With that said, and in anticipation that the governor is going to sign this bill, I personally don't see the need to even consider a new ordinance extending the mask mandate. We're also seeing employees or downtown businesses or businesses in general finding it difficult to find employees for the summer months because employees are finding alternative employment in neighboring towns where there is no mask requirement. So it's undoubtedly had an effect on our businesses this past year, but it's certainly starting to have even more of an effect as we start going into our summer tourist season. So I'll leave it at that, but in anticipation that the governor is going to pass that House bill or sign that House bill, I think we can just anticipate our ordinance going away May 13th. If not sooner. So.
Mr. Mayor, I concur, and I think given the current legislative and other circumstances, I think once the governor has signed this, I don't think we have any option but to consider our ordinance repealed, in effect. And so I would not encourage any of our businesses to seek to be in any form or fashion get into a conflict with a customer or patron over the wearing of a mask. I clearly think we as a city should continue to recommend that people wear masks if they're not otherwise comfortable. But I think that's as far as we can go.
I agree, Frank.
Yeah.
Rebecca and then Steve.
Well, I just would like to remind the public that this decision was not based on science. This is based on politics, and that in order to protect yourself from COVID-19 in congregate settings, people still should be masking if they're at risk or not even vaccinated. I still think a lot of people will still be careful with it. We can't enforce it as a city because we're a chartered government. Angie explained this to me. We can set laws, but we can't compete with state or federal laws. So when the governor and the Republican legislature, because the Democrats did not go along with this, took away those safety precautions, it means that we cannot act. But that doesn't mean that the reality on the ground is that we're out of the pandemic and that COVID isn't mutating every time it comes into a new human being. So I think by now we know how to protect ourselves. We just as a city can't enforce anything at this point. So I'm still hoping that the public does the right thing and that the people that are working in customer service positions in particular protect themselves by masking. We're hoping by the fall the children will be back in school without masks. So it's a transition period anyways, but I'd still be very cautious with the amount of people that are coming here. So we made it this far. So it's just—
Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah.
For your comments. Steve.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I just want to say about it. I mean, it feels like we're kind of at the light at the end of the tunnel piece. And then I just found out today that my father was diagnosed with COVID and his wife. So, I'm a little torn on what we should do and how to move forward with this. But I've also built a career on working with people who are oppositional to rules that are set down by adults. And at some point you come to a place where you just have to say, we can't fight this fight any longer because it's just not going, we're not going to get anywhere with it. And so in terms of letting our mandate expire, that makes the most sense at this point. And we'll just have to cross our fingers for the summer and hope that things go well. Hopefully we can revisit if we get data that says that we're having another surge in this pandemic, especially locally, and we might have to defy what the state says and see what they're willing to do about it. But at this point, we've done what we can do as a city, I think the businesses and certainly the citizens of the city appreciate, at least the ones I've talked to, appreciate what we've done, keep them safe, and we just need to go forward with letting things expire and keeping our fingers crossed. So that's all I got to say about it.
Thanks, Steve. Further comments from the council on this item? We'll move on to, well, we'll stay with item 10, and we'll start with councilor comments, and we'll start with Councilor Fury tonight.
No comments. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Andy. Councilor Sweeney.
No comments other than I'm looking forward to in-person meetings again. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Councilor Norton.
Again, want to send out a great thank you to the staff for getting us through this pandemic. I mean, we're not out of the woods yet, but I think everybody has done fantastic, and it feels more hopeful in the community. And thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Rebecca. Councilor Henman.
No comment for me this evening.
Thank you, Ryan. And Councilor Cornell.
I just want to give a shout out to the people who are working on the Whitefish trails. Been riding a lot so far this spring, and the trails are in great shape, and they've been quickly clearing out the places where trees have fallen. And if you have a chance, get out there, get on Strava, and be part of the Trails Challenge and help them raise money to keep doing what they're doing.
Thanks, Steve. I've got a couple things just in follow-up from public comment earlier this evening. The Energy Innovation Act. I know that I've received a couple emails from, I believe it's Robin, and certainly Melissa Hartman. Is this something the council would like to see on a future agenda for consideration and potential action?
Yes, I would.
Just a showing of hands. Okay, seeing that as unanimous, thank you. We did have the letter that was submitted by North Valley Music School this afternoon. Many of you probably haven't seen it yet because it hit your inbox pretty late, but just showing of hands if you'd like to see that letter included in the May 17th packet. And that looks unanimous as well. Dana, real quickly, June 1st, our budget meeting, what time does that start?
I'll start at 5:30.
5:30.
We'll get an agenda out before then. 5:30 on the 1st. Then we'll have the June 7th regular meeting, and then you have the June 14th is the second budget work session.
Okay.
And
sorry, go ahead, Dana.
Well, I was just going to say on the resolution for the Carbon Act, we will hold that as a public hearing. I do have some concerns, just so that you're aware of how that meets our charter definition of jurisdictional area. Our charter is pretty specific about what information or what initiatives we're supposed to get involved with. I think you can make an argument that it applies specifically to Whitefish and not just the United States as a whole. So I would have you guys look at section Title 1, Chapter 6, and just review the jurisdictional boundaries as you review that policy. It does deal with I can't remember the word they use, tax, but similar to a tax on carbon businesses. So.
Okay. Thanks, Dana. And I think that's about all I had, with the exception, the man that sits behind the curtain, Jake Cook, is turning 50 this week. And I just wanted to give a big shout out to our friend and partner in crime here at the city, Jake Cook. Not only is he an exceptional friend of mine, but I know he is to many of you, and oftentimes goes unnoticed how much work and effort and pride and care Jake puts into his work here at the city, and extends well beyond just these meetings. I can tell you that. So just a heartfelt happy birthday to our friend Jake Cook, and hope you have a great birthday. And on that note, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Happy birthday, Jake.